Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with Holland-based jazz flutist, composer, and improviser Mark Lotz. We talked about his new 2023 album, That You Not Dare to Forget, and so much more. His work in jazz and contemporary music often crosses borders with other cultures. Collaborations go into film, theater, performance art, visual arts, and dance. Over the years, he has worked with many unknown and many famous but equally gifted unique voices and music all over the globe. Enjoy this interview. It's great to catch up with you, and I know that you've been busy, so what's been going on with you lately?
Hi, Joe. Thank you. I've been in Germany attending a network thing, and that was quite exhausting, as you probably can hear with my voice.
Absolutely. Well, it's good. I'm actually getting a good feed here, so I am very glad to catch up with you. And before we get into your latest album, That You Not Dare to Forget, I think there's one thing that we haven't forgotten, which has been the pandemic for the last 3 years. And I'm curious, as a musician, how did you survive that time period, and how has it changed the way that you conduct business and do things now?
Right. First of all, I suffered like all musicians around the world. You know, the way we tick is we like to perform, to make music. And this is not possible without an audience. So the lack of listeners and applause and a little touch on the head, if someone says, Mark, well done, is really horrible. And I had one idea. I just took my savings and I bought a new flute. And I thought, I don't need that money for my pension, but I would rather invest it in a new instrument so that I keep practicing. And that's what I did. So I played a lot in my new flute, which is gorgeous. And that kept me going. And the other thing was here in Holland, where I live, it was possible to get fundings and stuff. So I organized myself quite a lot, concert series and a little festival. And like this, I got many musicians to at least have a little performance. And I even gave my students, because I teach 2 conservatories, also little gigs, as the youngsters, of course, they suffer maybe more because, we old ones, we have a wife, we have a house, that's it's somehow it's not so bad. But the youngsters, trying to develop, they were really falling into a hole. So to give them some mental and financial support, I gave them gigs. And so what I had was lots of music concert series, which was great. And then Black Lives Matters came up, and I had a little concert series I was able to do, which was called Mark My Worlds. And I had the L in abbreviations. I don't know if I say it well. I'm German, so I hope you don't mind my bad English language. And Mark My Worlds was a concert series to give the musicians from other traditions of the world a voice here in Holland. So it was always opened by a solo act. I interviewed this artist about his travel, about his life, how it is to live in Holland as a guy or woman with a different background. And then I performed with the World Music Ensemble, and at the end we all played together. And that was always different musicians, different projects, and I enjoyed to full extent Also, what I would really recommend to other musicians out there, I made part of a musicians collective. So we created a festival, and it was is a collective based in Utrecht. And Utrecht is a little town right in the center of Holland, which is a very little country. And with this collective of four musicians, five, sorry, we from different backgrounds. So we had jazz, but we also had like a sound, a young woman who makes how you say, more sound design, an inventor of instruments. We invented two festivals and put up two festivals and a concert series in a museum of mechanical instruments, and that was very exciting, of course. And besides that, I was fortunate enough to get a assignment for a composition, um, and I was quite busy. So in the end, during Corona, I finished four CDs, and the first was this assignment which I dedicated to the women of Afghanistan, and it's with an all-star European band with quite a classical setting. So it's me on flute or flutes, Claudia Puntin, which is a Swiss clarinet player of quite some reputation, and a really gorgeous composer. Very interesting soloist. From Switzerland, and Jörg Brinkmann on cello, also from Germany. And so with clarinet, flute, and cello, we are really heading into a classical setting, right? And then I added a German drummer, Dirk Peter Kölsch, and a Dutch pianist called Jeroen van Vliet. And this CD presents all new compositions. Every track is dedicated to a female activist. Many of them are from Afghani descent. The CD which is coming out right now is a CD by a trio, and that's the Mark Lotz trio, and its debut CD was made quite some waves. We were featured in the US by the New York Jazz Record Magazine, and we won twice in the best of 2019, which was funny because this CD was just a jam session, right? Not planned at all. And I did this with two Polish musicians. And then the lockdown came, and we couldn't play. So I started composing a new set of compositions, and I was looking, how to give this a form, a concept. And I wouldn't say I'm a drug user, but of course we share part of history and growing up. So I was inspired by the 8 Circles of Consciousness by Dr. Timothy Leary. And that's the famous LSD guru from the 60s. And he made like a psychedelic hypothesis, a humanistic approach on the evolution of humankind. And it's 8 different stages of consciousness. And these circles were the inspiration for the compositions I wrote. And we have a new CD out in June, which is called Turn On, Tune In, Drop Out.
So I guess what I would like to do next is kind of get an idea of how you got into music. How did jazz become this passion for you?
Yes, that's quite a story, because I have a great father. And my father is Rainer Lotz, a German engineer who is a big jazz fan. And so he was uh, uh, tried to play the drums and the trombone, but he found himself to a big extent unmusical. So he started collecting. So I have a father who was all my life mostly absent because he was busy with collecting records. And this hobby expanded. So he became a historian, a journalist, a researcher, and he made many publications, discographies. And at the end, he came up with really the most fantastic publications. It's like Black Europe. It's very important. So if you have blackeurope.com, check it. It's incredible. So growing up, he was always at his desk, and there was music. So a lot of Duke Ellington, but also Cecil Taylor, the comedian harmonists, and we grew up in Thailand, Bangkok, Thailand, and Uganda, Kampala, which for sure had left its marks. And but maybe the biggest influence was this exposure to music a lot. And what he did was a very smart thing. So when I was old enough, and I think he brought me to concerts, and I think I was 13, 14, 15 years old, I don't know. He brought me to concerts of the Lionel Hampton Big Band, by then in Bonn, and the Pasadena Roof Orchestra, which made like dance music of the 30s, 40s. But also Herbie Hancock's tour with Rocket, I believe it was. Or he brought me to Cologne to a fantastic concert of the Frank Zappa Mothers of Reunion, a reunion of the Motherhood of Invention, I think. And that was great. So I saw the Fowler brothers, George Duke, and so that was really fun. Yeah, so I think that's more or less the reason why I started music and got infected by the urge to express myself in this art form. And in, in Bonn, there's a flute player called Michael Heupel, which I still consider the very best. So even if I traveled the globe, I saw many people, I learned from many people, and still he's my Übech. He's like a fantastic artist, and nobody knows him, which is really horrible. And so my background is jazz, but then I started studying, and I had no sound whatsoever because I started as an autodidact, right? So I wanted to play the flute. I didn't get one somehow, and I got my first flute by earning it during working in a tannery. So I worked for some weeks in a tannery to earn money, and I bought my first flute, and I just started by myself because I didn't dare to go to Michael, who lived in the same town. But I thought, now as a beginner, I cannot approach him, which is a big fault, of course, because you need a teacher right away. And but then went studying in Holland, so I moved and in the conservatory, and there I got to have a very good, excellent flute teacher, which, funny enough, I just met yesterday in Bremen. And she, after 2 years study, she crossed her arms, looked with her stern eyes of obedience to me, and said, "Mark, you are making your, how do you say, application, entrance exam to become a classical musician, and so you have to study classical music. And as a German, I'm very submissive, and I said, "Yes, Mrs. Okay, then I'll do this." So I started also studying classical music, which is fantastic. I mean, if the flute, its tradition is in classical Western music also. So that broadened my horizon as I passed and I started classical music. And my teacher there was Jos Swanenburg, and that's was a contemporary musician, a lot into extended techniques, sound research, into a lot into yeah, contemporary music. And he was like a composer and musician at the same time with a, and he was my age almost. And so a very open musician who really forced me to also, make my first compositions and go ahead. And this maybe explains also why I'm quite broad. I mean, I love jazz, so at home I study my Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, and Charlie Parker. But somehow I was always exposed to world music, so the music, Asian music, which I mean, I love Indian music, so that's my big hobby to play the bamboo flute, the bansuri, which makes a big part of my professional language right now, even. And or on the other hand, the African music, of course, which somehow I experienced, and which led me to have like in the early stage of my career, I did a trilogy. I released a trilogy of interpretations of Afro-Cuban music, which came all by accident. But so at the end, I recorded in Cuba with the really great people from the Santeria community by there. So it's all Santeria music, mostly a bit Arara, and which is, if I can explain, it's African, the Yoruba belief survived in Cuba, disguised a bit by Catholic belief, and the music stayed went, its own way in Cuba, and I love that music. So we did a European crossover with African music, and probably the CD Lots of Music in Havana might be still my freshest CD, I think. Somehow we had the right spot in the right moment. I don't know how. Features, among others, Miguel Angel Diaz, who passed away already, or Amelia Pedroso, who was the only female drummer. She is a great vocalist and she sings, but she also was one of the few who was allowed to play bata in a religious, which is a drum in a religious context. So yes, so and then later on, which is maybe my most commercial record, I did a crossover with West African Fulani music. So it's music of the Fula, which is a tribe who brought of nomads, a tribe of nomads who brought the Islam to West Africa. So all the important marabouts were Fulas, and they have their own language, which is Fulani. And there are some quite popular, famous musicians like Baba Mal, or the guy Ry Cooder recorded with Ali Farka Touré and Doumani Diabaté. So there are many. For us Western people, it's very pleasing music. So it's like blues, African blues. Um, so I had my take on that with the Rotterdam-based singer Omar K. And right now, the first CD I released this year was a duet with a Nigerian saxophone player who approached me and said, "Hey, shouldn't we record?" And I was a bit skeptical and said, "Okay, for at home, it's okay." And then we recorded, and during Corona, we had a lot of time, and he spent here a day, and then he showed me the mixed result, and I was really astonished. I thought, "Hey, this is nice music," because yeah, and I said, "Hey, you could release it, right?" And he did. So we have now a duo recording, and Echa, that's his name. It's all his compositions. It's African tunes performed on soprano and alto flute, which is quite a special setting. Um, yeah, and my latest Corona project would be finishing off recordings which I did in Senegal, um, which would be the second release of that band around Fula music. And hopefully I finish it in summer, and I don't know when to put it on the market, but that's also a great CD with some great artists from Dakar, Senegal. Could you,
Excellent.
right? Hmm?
That's great. No, you've given me a really good expose of kind of what's going on and kind of the methodology behind it. So I'm going to make sure that everyone out there knows where they can pick up the music,
Right.
anything live show related, what's coming up for you as kind of the world opens up and the year kind of expands into the warm months.
Right. Okay. So right now I'm looking forward to some really nice concerts with band with an Indian singer, and she's called Shashwati Yagadish. And we have some, yeah, great gigs coming up. And this is a band which is concentrating on interpretations, electronic interpretations, European electronic interpretations, I should say, of Carnatic songs. She brings in and me and Stefan Schmidt, it's a very long time friend and piano player. We try to yeah, give it itching electronic spiritual touch. And we are helped a lot by Heiko Dijker, who is not only an excellent, as I really say, excellent tabla player. I've been many times in India, so I can say he's a very good tabla player, who has a big ear towards electronic music as well. So that's coming up. The CD releases are coming up. Just, I hope to get more gigs because that's what we musicians need, right? And at the end, I try to serve the local community also by art. So I 6 years ago I started a little jazz festival here in my little town, and this town is a very unfortunately ugly town because in the 80s, they did really stupid things here. But it's just the center, the outskirts. It's full of really nice houses because many rich people live here. And this city has a castle. And around the castle, there are also some historic buildings which came from the Herrenhutters, which was a religious belief from Germany. They fled Germany and found a home here. And so this jazz festivals in chamber music around this castle in living rooms. And I'm busy with preparing that as well. And I have a little world music concert series here in the same town, which also knows a deprived neighborhood. So again, I was I'm passing this what once has been the longest flat of Europe by bicycle, and there's many illegal prostitution drug dealers, many people with a little money, people who throw themselves once a year from the roof. So it's a quite rough thing. But of course, I dive into it with full joy because they cook well, right? And I started a little music world concert series there, reflecting the nationalities living there, and try to get them into a little living room, more or less. It's like a cafe, which gives somehow a safe surrounding. And in the daytime, I let the musicians have a little performance for elementary school, which might be the best thing I did in my life. So they play for the children, and I stand besides it, and I have a tear in my eye because they sometimes experience the African harp, the kora. So they're African children, but they never have seen an African kora or someone who sings in their language, Wolof or whatever. And so this is really a nice thing to do. So there's more than just only music.
Wonderful. Mark, it's so great to catch up with you. Thank you for opening up the world of your music now, what's going on, a little bit of history. It's great to catch up with you.
So for when they want to, my name is Mark Lotz. If you go to lotsofmusic.com, you find music.
Excellent. Hey, Mark, thank you.
Now, Joe, thank you. Also, I'm flattered. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Holland, Germany, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Mark for reaching out to the show for his story and cool. If you want to hear more interviews, Neon Jazz interviews can be found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also subscribe to us at YouTube. For everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.